literally creates our body.
But it all starts in the cell. And who gives the cells the order? The orders come from the neural net in our brains, which are based on the experiences and information that we've logged in there. And we use a certain box of solutions to our life that causes chemistry to take place. So in order for us to change the chemistry, we would literally have to change the neural net, which means we'd have to change our identity, which means we'd have to change our attitude, or change the way in which we interact with our environment. And every time we keep being the same person and keep experiencing the same attitudes, all we're doing is reinforcing ourselves as our identity.
I once did a little gig in a woman's prison they're all heroin addicts, and by teaching them that they have receptors for the heroin, and that the more heroin that they take, their ability to make their own internal endorphins, their own internal heroin, basically starts to decline. And then the receptors start to become subsensitive, or there's actually less of them. So there's these actual changes, and then this new information about how less brain cells are being made, so that people get kind of, in all addictions, they get stuck in old patterns.
The person's mental life becomes dominated by pain, such that everything that they perceive is colored by the pain, and sometimes every way that they react and everything that they do becomes all about their pain.
One of the things about receptors is they change in their sensitivity. If a given receptor for a given drug or internal juice is being bombarded for a long time at a high intensity, it will literally shrink up. There will be less of them, or it will be hooked up in such a way that it is desensitized or downregulated. So the same amount of drug or internal juice will elicit a much smaller response.
If we're bombarding the cell with the same attitude and the same chemistry over and over again on a daily basis, when that cell finally decides to divide, when it produces a sister cell or a daughter cell, that next cell will have more receptor sites for those particular emotional neuropeptides and less receptor sites for vitamins, minerals, nutrients, fluid exchange, or even the release of waste products or toxins. Now, all aging is a result of improper protein production. What happens when we age? Our skin loses elasticity. Well, elastin is a protein. What happens to our enzymes? We don't digest as well. What happens to our synovial fluid? Those are proteins. They become brittle and stiff. What happens to our bones? They become thin. So all aging is a result of improper protein production. So then the question arises, does it really matter what we eat? And does nutrition really have an effect if the cell doesn't even have the receptor sites after 20 years of emotional abuse to even receive or to let in the nutrients that are necessary for its health? So if the muscle cell is making healthy muscle protein, and over years and years of producing the same attitude chemically, that cell starts to produce the normal muscle protein, but now in the sequence is the amino acid sequence of sadness. That's not the same protein, because we know scientifically that if we alter the amino acid sequence, we've changed the protein. So we have normal muscle protein with the signal of the attitude mixed in with that particular protein. And that's a cheaper grade of protein. It's a weaker protein. And so if you look at the human body when it ages because the proteins that we've produced once when we were 16 or 17 years old are now a cheaper grade of protein than when we're 50 or 60 years old. And who gives the orders for the signaling and from the brain all the way to the receptor site is our own personal attitude. Now, they'll tell you, if you read any scientific text, that genetics causes diseases. Genetics cause disease. And then recently, science now says, well, no, it's not genetics that causes disease. It's the environment that stimulates the genetics that cause disease. But what I'm saying is it's our reaction to the environment that stimulates the effects of genetics that causes disease in the human body. So if we change our attitude, that means we're going to change the effects neurochemically, which means we're going to change our effects biologically, which means we're going to change the effects of the receptor site, which means we're going to change the expression of DNA, which means we're going to change the expression of protein, which means we're going to change the expression of life, which means we're going to change the health of the physical body. So our attitude literally has an effect on a cellular level.